This screen corrects for differences in quantity. You'll notice in the header that SpendLogic notes whether a price increase or decrease is expected. The basic logic is that if you're buying more items this time than last time, you should be receiving a discount. If fewer items are being purchased now, then a price increase would be expected. The first item asks whether an adjustment to price due to quantity differences is required. If you have some reason to believe that a price difference should not be required, choose No and explain it in the text box. Typically, an adjustment will be required and you'll be choosing Yes. After choosing Yes, a drop-down list is shown. I'll go through each of the items in this list now. The first option shows that the prior proposed price, which is what we entered as the basis price, included pricing for the current quantity. This is useful if the prior quote included the quantity that you wish to buy today. If that's the case, enter the price for this quantity from the prior quote. SpendLogic will calculate and apply a correction factor for you. The second option is appropriate if you have known prices for multiple quantities. By choosing this item, you're asked to provide an explanation of where the data is coming from. If you choose either of the last two items, similar or previous, you'll be asked to provide additional information. Continue down and enter the appropriate start and end units for the related price. For instance, if you know the price for quantity 2 through 5, quantity start would be 2, quantity end would be 5, and the known price for those quantities would be entered here. If you instead know pricing for individual quantities, then the numbers in start and end would be the same. For instance, if you know the quantity of 2, quantity start would be 2 and quantity end would be 2. You will need at least 3 points to make this function work. However, you can always add more. In fact, the more points you add, the more reliable your final calculations will be. I'll go ahead and fill in some information on this page now. Once you fill in the page, you'll see a graph. This is the regression that plots the proposed price along with the data points known. Take a minute to review your graph and make sure that it makes sense. SpendLogic runs multiple regressions in the background and recommends whichever one has the highest R-squared value. R-squared is a statistics term that refers to how well the data entered fits on a line on a graph and ranges from 0 to 100%. The higher the R-squared, the better your data is when graphed. Generally, you should look for an R-squared value to be 90% or higher. If you have a low R-squared value, it's recommended that you use a different method for quantity correction. The quantity correction factor is what SpendLogic is applying to translate the prior price paid to the current price based on quantity. This calculation is applied automatically and is reflected in the analysis price in the upper left-hand part of the screen. The third option is to apply standard Dod factors. This works similar to inputting multiple prices and quantities, but rather than use data to identify a curve, SpendLogic creates its own curve using a slope of 95%. If you choose this option, no further input is required. SpendLogic automatically makes the calculations and applies the result. The last option is one that is likely to be used fairly rarely. If you know the price correction that is required for the difference in quantity, you can input it directly here. SpendLogic will apply whatever value you input. If you apply something less than 100%, you'll see a decrease in price. If you apply something greater than 100%, you'll see an increase in price. Make sure to be complete when entering the rationale in the box below. Once you've completed this screen, click Next.